Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Teaching Tax Flow podcast, episode 157. Today, we are visiting an old friend called the LLC. And as we explore the steps in forming an LLC, here's the quiz question for you. Do you know what LLC actually stands for? You may be surprised, but before we do that, as always, let's thank our episode sponsor.
This episode is sponsored by Wealth Builders Mortgage Group, powered by Movement Mortgage, one of the top mortgage teams in the nation and a powerhouse in the real estate investing world. With over $1.1 billion in closed mortgage volume and more than 3,000 investor deals under their belt, they don't just talk the talk, they walk it. Their team specializes in helping short-term and long-term rental investors scale smart with customized lending strategies. They offer all STR loan products, including second home, investment, non-QM, bank statement, asset-based, and HELOCs. They also offer all primary home loan products too. Whether you're just starting out or expanding an existing portfolio, their unique Path of 10 strategy is designed to help you move from a 9-to-5 job to financial independence. If you're looking for a lending partner who truly understands the investor mindset, visit wealthbuildersmortgagegroup.com and start building your roadmap today.
All right, everybody, here we are back again on the podcast, and we're going to answer that question that you probably heard there in the intro on what the actual definition, or I shouldn't say definition, what LLC actually stands for. And to answer that question, nobody better comes to mind than my co-host, Chris Picciurro. What's happening, man? How are you?
I am well. How are you doing today?
I am doing good, man. I'm
Good,
excited
man.
about this one because old friend, that this is the one that I like to poke the bear, push the buttons with a little bit. Our friend, the LLC, right?
Oh, absolutely. And we
That'd be
know
nice.
that there's a lot of misnomers about LLCs. And obviously, this is Teaching Tax Flow, the podcast, legally and ethically reducing the tax you pay in your lifetime. An LLC is a legal entity, so we're going to focus on the steps to forming an LLC. And then we'll mention some of the tax ramifications of forming one as well. So yeah, it's a topic that's very, very popular. And, for some reason, many taxpayers think that that just forming an LLC provides you with a bunch of wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, tax benefits. But an LLC is a very important tool when it comes to risk management and operations, and it can definitely provide some benefits. It's just not an automatic gateway to dancing around and paying no taxes.
So really, Chris, with an LLC, right? So I know we're going to get into debunking some myths with this and define and remind everybody what it actually stands for. But really with this, to what you said there, your attorney would be more excited about an LLC than your tax professional, is what I'm taking from it, right?
Yeah, and quite frankly, there are a lot of times where your tax professional and your attorney have a different opinion about how you should be structured. And we talk about this in the Teaching Tax Flow community. Your entity structure should mirror the complexity and the risk of your operations. So if you have a lot of complexity, you have a lot of risk, you should have a more complex structure. But a lot of times I feel like people overdo it. Might buy one rental property, but form 5 LLCs because you need this management company and this holding company and this and that and the other thing. But we're going to jump into that, and we're going to talk about the LLC. And LLC stands for Limited Liability Company. A lot of people don't understand that. So yeah, an LLC is a limited liability company. And let's talk about the steps. The first step when you're forming an LLC is quite simply come up with a name, right? You got to come up with a name that is not utilized already. And when you come up with a name, the name must include LLC in it or limited liability company, but you're going to want to check with your state Secretary of State database and the United States trademark database to make sure no one took your name. So John, you can't just go create Coca-Cola LLC, unfortunately.
That's true. And you know what, looking back a little bit in history, I don't remember where I was exactly, but as weird as this is, and I don't know if I've ever actually told you this, I remember being on the phone with you I remember I was driving somewhere and I was telling you I was going to start a marketing agency. So, I mean, we're going back uh, almost 20 years, right?
Right. A
Around
way
15,
back
20
machine.
years. And I remember even then, I was like, well, what do I got to name this? You're like, I don't care what you name it. It doesn't matter. Like
Right.
your name, it could be, 13 initials, which you'll see, I think, for some investment groups in that.
Right.
But the name does not matter, right? It's literally just something that's unique, identifiable. I mean, as everybody does, right? We're not going to get into on this, but there's DBAs that doing business as, but the LLC is that um, layer of liability protection
Yeah, it's the
itself.
name of the business. So you pick a name, and then the second step is you select a registered agent. So every LLC has to have a registered agent in the state that it operates in. It doesn't have to be you. So you could be your own registered agent. You can use a third party. You can use a virtual registered agent. In other words, that has locations all over the United States. You can use an attorney. You can use anyone but someone has to have a physical location in the state that you form your LLC. And that's important. So the registered agent is the one that actually receives all of your legal and tax documents for the LLC, and you could be your own registered agent. Now, shameless plug. We have a registered agent that we work with in the teaching tax law community called CorpNet. They help people form LLCs and act as registered agent all over the United States. Even if that's something you need, definitely leave a comment in our comments area, and we will reach out to you, or go to the Teaching Tax Flow Hub. John could put that link in the description, and we can help guide you in the right direction. So the point is, you don't have to you could live in the state of Michigan, John, and form an LLC in the state of Florida if you wanted to. Again, talk to a tax professional, more or less talk to your legal counsel before you do that. But when it comes to that implementation, we have those tools for you. Ideas are cheap. Implementation is valuable in the teaching tax flow system.
And we don't want to give any bad advice. So here's maybe some good one. And Chris, and tell me if I'm extremely wrong in this one. So there's the disclaimer. Don't do this. Don't just do a Google search on forming an LLC and click on the first link that tells you to register it in Delaware. Let's be
Right.
honest, because that
Right.
usually is one of the first ones that come up, and we won't get into that. But
So select the registered agent. It could be yourself. But remember, whatever address you put as a registered agent is where all your official mail goes and can be found. So I can go into any state database and look up an LLC. And I want you to think about it. Do you want if you're using your home address in one of your LLCs, that means someone could easily find that. So just something to think about. The third, file your articles of organization. Those articles of organization do not, I want to stress this, do not get sent to the Internal Revenue Service. They get sent to the state, the Secretary of State office. And maybe you could file them online, depending on the state, where you're registering your LLC. This is what officially creates your LLC. And when you file your articles of organization, you are providing your business name, your address. You have to identify who your registered agent is in your management structure. So are you member managed? Are you manager managed? You have to figure that out. And then you file those articles of organization. That is basically the birth of your LLC. Filing fees are going to range. Some states are, I've seen as low as $25, $30. Some states, California, they're about, there could be up to $800 per LLC.
way to go,
Just to
California.
file. Yeah.
And Chris, it's funny that you mentioned the reference of the birth, right? Like that Articles of Org doc really is the birth certificate of
Yeah,
your
that's a good
LLC.
way to say it.
And I'm so glad. And it's funny. I didn't, we did not talk about that. So I'm super glad that you referenced it in that way. And then here's some more advice. Take it from somebody who had a hard time tracking one of theirs down a long, long time ago. Keep it where it's easily accessible. I think now you can probably get them a lot quicker from your Secretary of State online, but you'll need those. But at the most random times you think you won't, they will be asked of you.
It's a great way to say it. It's like a birth certificate for your business. You're going to need it. You will need it. Now, once you file your articles of organization, then you need to create an operating agreement. I highly recommend you have a formal operating agreement that is written, that is a living, breathing document, even if you are a single member LLC. Now, we're going to call timeout here. I want to stress, remember, a single member LLC by default is a disregarded entity for federal tax purposes. So, John, if you run a business and you form an LLC, you own a rental property, and you form an LLC, you don't have additional filing requirements on the federal level just by forming an LLC. However, you should have an operating agreement. The operating agreement is going to lay out the ownership, the profit splits, the management, and how you resolve disputes. This is your blueprint. These are the rules for the organization. So if you have a dispute, if you are giving someone the authority to act on behalf of the LLC, even if it's yourself, that's written out in the operating agreement. Now, an operating agreement is not legally required by every state, but I can't recommend it more highly. So even if you want to use an online service, if you feel that's appropriate based on the complexity and risk of your LLC, that's fine, or consult an attorney. But the operating agreement is a living and breathing document that could get amended quite often too.
Yeah. And Chris, here's a question for you, not to deviate from it at all, but I'm sure pretty much everybody's seen it, right? Like I feel like law firms usually have it, where it's PLLC. What's that P stand for?
Yep, professional limited liability company. So many industries are required to be a PLLC, and you're going to see that, usually in a law firm, accounting firm, and that sort of stuff. And there could be a couple different statutes based on what state you're in.
But so basically the same thing, just an identifier.
Yes, it's a special type of LLC for professional service companies. Next step, I obtain a federal identification number, or EIN. Now that can be done online. It has to be done online now. And for many people, it's actually required. You can just get one on the IRS website, irs.gov. Even if you're a single member LLC, you should get a federal identification number that separates it from your social security number. You're going to want that for potentially anonymity. You're going to want that for asset protection. You're going to want that for banking purposes. So get an EIN number or work with someone to get you an EIN number. And you can do that right online on irs.gov. It takes about 5 minutes. However, don't screw it up. There's some very important questions in that EIN number that if you click the wrong button, the IRS is going to think you're not what you want to be, if that makes sense.
And don't lose the number.
Oh, correct.
Again,
that's like your
from somebody who knows.
Social security number. That's your social security. That's your, so you've got a birth certificate, right? Which is, we've discussed, but the EIN is like your social security number. So you need that. Don't lose it. And when you get it, store that. When you apply for it, it'll get mailed to you, but it's going to pop up on your computer, a downloadable PDF of that EIN. Definitely download it. Download that thing. The next, you're going to now that you've gotten formed, you have your operating agreement, you've got your EIN, you're going to want to register for state and business licenses or taxes. Just depends on your state where you're at. That could be sales tax. It could be franchise tax. It could be withholding tax. It could be permits and business licenses. So John, let's think about your situation. Let's say you formed an LLC to have a marketing agency. Awesome. Marketing agencies are a service-based business. So you're typically not going to have sales tax unless you live in a state that taxes professional service, or that'd be rare. But once you hire employees, you're going to have withholding tax. You're going to have to register with the state, or you're probably going to have an excise tax or franchise tax. You can't register for this in the states that you're supposed to file in until you have the EIN number, the operating agreement, et cetera, et cetera. So the next step, or step 6, is to get registered with state tax and business licenses. And then once you're registered, then go open your bank account. Try to keep your personal and business funds separate, not even if you're the only member of the LLC. And when you go to see, and John, you mentioned this, when you go to the bank, this is why you want to keep track of all that stuff. And you say, hey, I formed an LLC. I want to start a business bank account. They're going to ask for your EIN, your articles of organization, and your operating agreement.
And there is no leeway. If you don't have those, you do not pass go and you do not collect $200 or
Then
whatever.
you don't have a
that
bank
is in
account, and
monopoly.
then ultimately you're really not you might form an LLC, but you're not acting and walking and talking like a duck, so you're not a duck. So yeah, absolutely, you want to start that business bank account. And then once you're set up, it's at that point you have responsibility. You, the person that formed the LLC, you have the responsibility to maintain compliance on an annual basis. That includes annual tax returns. Now, some states are biannual for the LLC. So here's what happens, John. Let's say you form an LLC. I'm going to use the state of Tennessee, for example. In the state of Tennessee, you form an LLC. Every year, you have to renew your LLC with the Secretary of State and pay that fee. Separate from that, you have to file with the Department of Revenue a franchise and excise tax return. They're two completely different filings. The Secretary of State renewal is something that is done, it has nothing to do with your income tax. It is a legal document that is filed by a registered agent. I can't tell you how many times taxpayers have their LLCs dissolved because they don't file their renewals. They lose all the stuff they work for, their asset protection. And they're thinking, well, I filed tax returns. Yeah, that's different than filing your renewal with the state.
And that's something I bet you a lot of people don't know. Right. So I mean, I would say it's almost like a blessing and a curse, right? Like I could, in the state of Michigan here, I think it's I'm guessing here, maybe $80 or $110, something like that. I could literally leave my desk, and by the time I get to my car, I could have an LLC formed, have an EIN, and I'm on my way to the bank. Like it's that quick that things happen. And why I say it's a blessing and a curse, like now it's so easy to do it. But the curse side of it is I think some people jump into it, like you had mentioned, they create so many of them thinking that, oh, everybody's going to love me. I'm going to be so organized because I have everything separated. But it almost becomes a little bit of an admin headache at some point. And then you realize like, oh, wow, this really didn't help me on the tax side, liability side maybe, but now my compliance cost, AKA filing your taxes, now the cost of doing that just went up maybe because you have 40 LLCs for every
And there are
thing you
some
do.
states that allow what are called, it's a concept called series LLCs that you can kind of roll one into one, but you've got to look on a state by state basis. And as far as maintaining ongoing compliance is what we're going to wrap it up on this is because we do have additional content. Your LLC one of the positives of it is it is a flexible entity, meaning it can always elect to be taxed as a C corporation. It could elect to be taxed as an S corporation. It could bring on new members. But if the LLC moves from a single member to multi-member, the tax reporting completely changes. So just make sure that you understand that concept of price versus cost. Yes, it might be inexpensive to create an LLC. It doesn't mean it's going to be a low cost to maintain it. I've got tons of terrible stories of people buying, one rental property. They've got 8 partners and they don't realize now, oh gosh, it's going to cost me $3,000 a year just to file a tax return. It doesn't matter if the rental property is an $80,000 property or a 10-unit apartment building. It's the same amount of reporting. LLCs could be great. They can help you out with asset protection. They could be a tax planning tool. They can give you peace of mind. However, make sure you talk to your centers of influence, your tax professionals, and most importantly, your legal counsel to apply these concepts. Again, ideas are cheap, implementation is valuable to you, to your situation, and if it makes sense to form an LLC. Also, you've got to put the asset in the LLC. I can't tell you how many times, well, I formed this LLC. Oh, do you have a piece of real estate? Did you put it in the LLC? No, not yet. Okay, well, John, it's like packing a bag, checking a bag at the airport, checking a bag at the airport with nothing in it, but you paid for that
Right.
bag. Hey, I can promise you it's going to be underweight. That's for sure. So it's a team sport. And if you're going to form an LLC, make sure you not only follow those steps we talked about, but maintain the ongoing compliance as well.
And that's a great example, right? Because an LLC could be as small as a startup cookie company, but then they can also be as large as, I think, the example that we actually brought up on the last podcast we did on this a couple years ago now was Stellantis, which is actually Chrysler, right? So it was Chrysler, which is Stellantis, I think, owned them. It's, if I remember right, some form of that name was actually an LLC. So it's obviously it's cheaper to do compliance for the bakery, I'd imagine, than a auto manufacturer. So just an example. And let's close it on that. If anybody is interested, obviously, in any more information that we have on LLCs, really just get on our YouTube, check out all the content we have on there, and really just look at what's there. Just look at it, search LLC, search any topic you can think of on there. Tons of stuff is going to come up. You're going to find reels, you're going to find podcasts, you're going to find all kinds of things. I think we had guests on there talking about different types of them. Check them out. There's an endless amount of information. I promise you, you will find the answer that you're looking for. So, Chris, as I was just mentioning here, right, it's, sending people to YouTube, do a search. You're going to find a ton of LLC stuff. And I was given the example, right, of Stellantis being an LLC and the startup cookie company being an LLC, but the compliance costs and efforts are a lot different than the two of those. So any final suggestions you have for somebody if they're thinking of forming an LLC, besides don't go over the top and form
My
one for your
suggestion,
LLC?
listen to this podcast and take
Bingo.
our advice.
Bingo. So if you made it this far in the show, you've actually already taken the advice, whether you knew it or not. So it's a
Absolutely.
great place to end. So, all right, everybody, again, any questions, drop us a line. We're here to help. Get on defeatingtaxes.com. That's a private Facebook group that we always mention in the show. You are welcome. There's your private invite. And in those show notes as well, too. We'll put a link down there, as Chris mentioned, for the hub. And reach out to us. If you have any questions, we're happy to connect you. We don't do that in teaching tax flow as far as for doing the registered agent side. We don't do a whole lot, in setting up on that at all. We have a partner that does it, and that's who we'll connect you with. So until next time, next week, same day of the week, different date, completely different topic here on the Teaching Tax Flow podcast. Have a great week, everybody.
The content provided is for educational purposes only. We encourage you to seek personalized investment advice from your financial professional. For all tax and legal advice, please consult your CPA or attorney. Investment advisory services are offered through Cabin Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cabin Securities, a registered broker-dealer. The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer of securities. Offerings can only be made through an offering memorandum, and you should carefully examine the risk factors and other information contained in the memorandum.